What if you could remain unshaken by life's chaos, not just in theory, but in practice, facing setbacks, frustrations, and even outright disasters with a calm, unbreakable composure? That's not just a fantasy, it's the reality of someone who's become what we call a Stoic Alpha. This isn't about dominance in the traditional sense. It's about mastering yourself, your emotions, your reactions, your mindset so thoroughly that nothing outside you can dictate your peace. Sound impossible? It's not. And today, we're going to explore exactly what it looks like when someone is walking this path. Think about the last time life threw you a curveball. Maybe it was a sudden job loss, a betrayal, or just one of those days where everything seemed to go wrong. How did you react? Most people get swept up in the storm, anger, anxiety, frustration taking over. But the Stoic Alpha doesn't just survive these moments, they thrive in them. They're the person who stays cool under pressure, who makes decisions from a place of clarity, not panic. They don't avoid hardship, they use it as fuel, and the best part, this isn't some rare genetic gift. It's a way of thinking, a set of principles anyone can adopt. So how do you know if you're becoming a Stoic Alpha? That's what we're here to uncover. Over the next 25 signs, we'll dive into the subtle shifts in mindset, behavior, and perspective that mark this transformation. You might already be further along this path than you realize. Maybe you've noticed yourself pausing before reacting, or finding a strange sense of calm in situations that used to rattle you. These are the clues. By the end of this, you'll not only see where you stand, you'll know exactly how to keep moving forward. Because becoming a Stoic Alpha isn't about reaching some final destination. It's about the daily practice of showing up as the strongest, wisest version of yourself, no matter what life brings. Ready to begin? Let's go. The first unmistakable sign you're becoming a Stoic Alpha. You stop fighting reality, not in a passive, defeated way, but with the razor-sharp clarity of someone who knows exactly where to direct their energy. 2,000 years ago, Epictetus laid it out plainly. Some things are up to us and some things aren't. Your opinions, your choices, your actions, those belong to you. The traffic, other people's behavior, the weather, those don't. The Stoic Alpha doesn't just nod along to this idea, they live it. You'll catch them responding to a cancelled flight, not with frantic complaints, but by calmly rebooking while others are still shouting at the gate. When a project at work gets axed, they're the ones already pivoting to plan B while colleagues drown in frustration. This isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about recognizing where your power actually lies. Modern life bombards us with fake emergencies, social media outrage, breaking news alerts, the illusion that we should control every outcome. The Stoic Alpha cuts through that noise. They'll prep meticulously for a job interview, then release attachment to the result. They'll train hard for a marathon, then smile when rain soaks race day. Why? Because they've internalized the ultimate productivity hack. Effort goes where it matters, acceptance handles the rest. Watch someone stuck in resistance, white-knuckling through a breakup, raging at a slow internet connection, and you're seeing energy leak from every pore. Now watch the Stoic Alpha in the same scenarios. They're not cold or detached, they're fully present, but instead of fighting gravity, they learn to work with it. That delayed shipment, they've already contacted customer service and moved on. The friend who flaked, they're reorganizing their evening without a trace of resentment. This shift changes everything, not because life gets easier, but because your relationship to what you can't change stops draining you. The magic happens when this mindset becomes second nature. You'll catch yourself pausing mid-frustration to ask, is this mine to fix? If yes, act. If no, breathe. No more moralizing about how things should be, just a clear-eyed assessment of what is. That's when you know the transformation is real. The Stoic Alpha isn't the person avoiding storms, they're the one who learned to sail. Sign 2 that you're evolving into a Stoic Alpha. Your emotions stop being the driver, they become the passenger. Picture this: someone cuts you off in traffic, and instead of slamming the horn or stewing in rage, you notice the heat rising in your chest and let it pass without handing it the wheel. That's not suppression, it's mastery. The ancient Stoics called this practice prosoché, a relentless mindful attention to your inner world. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who ruled an empire but first ruled himself, scribbled reminders in his journals like, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." He wasn't writing platitudes, he was training himself to spot emotional hijackings before they steered his decisions. Here's the critical shift: reactive people are puppets to their feelings, while responsive people, those leaning into Stoic Alpha territory, recognize emotions as signals, not commands. Think of it like weather systems passing through. A reactive person gets drenched by every storm, cursing the rain. A responsive one feels the first drop, grabs an umbrella, and adjusts their stride without breaking rhythm. Marcus's journals reveal this daily practice. He'd record his irritations: a disrespectful senator, a logistical headache, then dissect them. Why does this bother me? What story am I telling myself? That pause between trigger and action, that's where the Stoic Alpha is forged. Modern life tests this constantly. Your boss sends a harsh email, and before you fire off a defensive reply, you catch yourself. That split-second awareness, "I'm flaring up right now," is prosoché in action. Or maybe a friend cancels plans, and instead of spiraling into "they don't value me," you question the narrative. This isn't about becoming emotionless, it's about ceasing to be enslaved by every passing feeling. Even negative emotions have value. Anger can highlight injustice, sadness can signal loss, but the Stoic Alpha interrogates them first. Is this useful? Is it true? The difference shows up in subtle ways. Ever watch two people receive the same criticism? One crumbles or lashes out, the other nods, weighs the feedback, and asks clarifying questions. The second person isn't denying their discomfort, they're just not letting it call the shots. Marcus wrote, "The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting." Translation: feelings are data, not dictators. When you start treating them that way, you're not at the mercy of life's turbulence anymore. You become the calm in your own storm. You begin spotting roadblocks not as dead ends, but as detours pointing toward unexpected growth. This is the third sign you're evolving into a Stoic Alpha, when obstacles stop looking like setbacks and start resembling invitations. The ancient Stoics had a name for this radical embrace: amor fati, the love of fate. Not just enduring what life throws at you, but actively appreciating it as the raw material for your transformation. Take Seneca, Rome's wealthiest playwright and advisor to emperors. When political enemies exiled him to Corsica, a barren island far from Rome's grandeur, he didn't crumble. Instead, he reframed banishment as a creative retreat. No distractions, no courtly drama, just time to write, reflect, and refine his philosophy. Those years in exile birthed some of his most enduring works, letters that would guide generations. He later wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." That's amor fati in action, the deliberate choice to polish yourself against life's roughest edges. Now fast forward to today. Imagine losing your job unexpectedly, a modern form of exile. The ordinary reaction spirals into panic or self-pity. But the Stoic Alpha sees something else entirely: space to pivot, to rediscover neglected skills, or even build something new. They might channel their energy into freelancing, using the forced freedom to diversify income streams. Or they treat the gap as a training ground, finally enrolling in that course they'd postponed for years. The obstacle didn't vanish, they simply stopped viewing it through the lens of victimhood and started asking, what does this make possible? This mindset flips traditional success narratives on their head. Society glorifies smooth sailing, but Stoic Alpha's no turbulence teaches navigation. A shattered business deal becomes a masterclass in negotiation. A failed product launch reveals untapped market needs. Even personal betrayals, while painful, can expose the strength of your boundaries or the depth of your resilience. The key lies in interrogating every setback. What's the lesson here? How does this prepare me for what's next? Notice how this differs from toxic positivity. Loving fate doesn't mean pretending hardship feels good. It means recognizing that discomfort often precedes evolution. Think of Olympic athletes who frame grueling workouts as becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable. Or entrepreneurs who credit early bankruptcies with teaching them financial discipline no MBA could match. The Stoic Alpha doesn't avoid the grind, they mine it for gold. When this clicks, you'll catch yourself reacting differently to life's hiccups. A cancelled meeting isn't wasted time, it's an unexpected gift to tackle backlogged tasks. A creative block pushes you to explore fresh inspiration sources. Even physical limitations like an injury forcing you to slow down can reveal overlooked joys in stillness or alternative training methods. Every no starts pointing toward an uncharted yes. This is where Stoicism transcends philosophy and becomes a superpower. While others burn energy resisting reality, you're already adapting, extracting value, moving forward. Amor fati isn't about slapping a smile on misfortune. It's the quiet confidence of knowing nothing can truly derail you because you've learned to repurpose every derailment into fuel. The fourth sign you're stepping into Stoic Alpha territory. You stop outsourcing your self-worth. Picture two people at a party, one anxiously checking their phone for likes on their latest post, the other fully engaged in conversation, undisturbed by invisible metrics. That second person understands what the Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus meant when he said, "What is dishonorable cannot be honorable simply because the crowd approves it." 2,000 years later, that lesson slices through modern clout culture like a scalpel. The Stoic Alpha doesn't measure their value in followers, promotions, or praise. They carry an unshakable internal compass. Musonius lived this. As a philosopher banished multiple times for his beliefs, he faced imperial threats with the same calm he brought to his lectures. When Emperor Nero exiled him to the barren island of Jaros, he didn't plead for mercy or lobby for recall. Instead, he transformed his rocky prison into a classroom, teaching Stoicism to fellow exiles. His students later recounted how he'd say, "If you seek approval, seek it from the one person whose judgment truly shapes your life, your best self." That's the core difference. External validation addicts need constant reassurance. Internally anchored individuals assess themselves by their own standards. Modern society runs on what you might call performance-based worth. Social media metrics equate your value with engagement numbers. Corporate ladders imply your dignity climbs with each promotion. Even casual conversations subtly reinforce this. "What do you do?" often means, "How impressive should I find you?" The Stoic Alpha opts out of that exchange. They're the colleague who contributes ideas in meetings without needing credit, the artist who creates regardless of trends, the leader who mentors without broadcasting it online. Their confidence isn't borrowed, it's earned through consistent alignment with their principles. Consider two CEOs. One craves headlines, basks in prestige, and crumbles when criticized. The other, like Patagonia's Yvon Chouinard, quietly donates their company to fight climate change, refusing fanfare. Or look at teachers in underfunded schools changing lives without viral moments. These are modern Musoniuses. Their impact isn't diminished by lack of spotlight, it's amplified by sincerity. This doesn't mean rejecting all feedback. The Stoic Alpha welcomes constructive criticism not because it defines them, but because it refines them. The difference lies in dependency. Needing applause is like building your house on sand. Every tide of opinion shifts your foundation. But when your worth stems from living virtuously, doing right when no one's watching, keeping promises to yourself, resisting shortcuts, you construct something stormproof. You'll recognize this shift in yourself when rejection stings less, when an ignored text or passed over promotion doesn't unravel your sense of capability. Not because you're indifferent, but because your self-assessment runs deeper than external verdicts. The Stoic Alpha knows their value like they know their reflection, not by waiting for others to describe it, but by facing it squarely every day. The fifth sign you're becoming a Stoic Alpha: you train for disaster before it strikes, not with fear, but with a strategic clarity that turns potential threats into rehearsals for resilience. This ancient practice, called premeditatio malorum, Latin for the premeditation of evils, was the Stoic's secret weapon for staying unshakable. Seneca would visualize losing his wealth, Epictetus would mentally rehearse insults hurled at him, and Marcus Aurelius would journal about his own death. Far from morbid fixation, this was their way of inoculating themselves against life's inevitable blows. Fast forward to today, and you'll find elite performers using the same principle. Navy SEAL call it the 40% rule. When your mind screams you're done, you've actually only tapped 40% of your capacity. They don't wait for the battlefield to discover their limits. They confront them in training, deliberately exposing themselves to exhaustion, stress, and failure until adversity feels familiar rather than frightening. Modern billionaires apply this same Stoic tool, but with spreadsheets instead of spears. Elon Musk famously plans for worst-case scenarios in his companies, running simulations where rockets explode or factories grind to a halt. Jeff Bezos built Amazon around the idea of day one mentality, treating every day like a startup on the brink, even when the company was worth hundreds of billions. These aren't pessimists, they're realists who understand that rehearsing disaster doesn't attract it, it defangs it. Imagine two entrepreneurs launching similar ventures. One obsesses over their perfect 5-year plan, while the other spends Sundays stress testing their business model. What if suppliers double prices? What if a key employee quits? What if the market crashes? The second founder isn't just preparing, they're psychologically immunizing themselves against panic when, not if, chaos arrives. This practice transforms how you engage with uncertainty. Most people avoid thinking about job loss, breakups, or health scares until they're forced to, which makes the shock paralyzing. The Stoic Alpha, though, has already walked through those scenarios mentally. They've visualized the layoff notice and rehearsed updating their resume. They've imagined the breakup and identified their support network. They've confronted the diagnosis and researched treatment options. When crisis hits, they're not scrambling, they're executing. It's the difference between a firefighter entering a burning building for the first time versus someone who's trained in smoke-filled rooms for years. One freezes, the other moves with precision. The magic lies in the neurological payoff. Studies on stress inoculation show that mentally simulating challenges activates the same neural pathways as facing them physically, effectively building muscle memory for resilience. Navy SEAL don't just endure Hell Week, they visualize it for months prior. So when sleep deprivation and freezing water arrive, their brains recognize the terrain. Similarly, the Stoic Alpha, who's mentally rehearsed losing a major client, doesn't spiral into despair when it happens. Their mind registers it as familiar territory. They've already mapped the exit routes, cut expenses, rally the team, pivot the strategy. But here's where most people misunderstand the practice. Negative visualization isn't about dwelling on doom, it's about spotlighting your agency within it. The Stoics didn't just picture their houses burning, they asked, what would I do next? That subtle shift, from passive victim to active problem solver, changes everything. Try it now, pick a fear, play it out mentally, then script your response. If your car skids on ice, you'll steer into the skid, not panic. If your partner leaves, you'll grieve but rebuild. By pre-living these moments, you strip them of their power to destabilize you. The Stoic Alpha doesn't just hope for the best, they prepare for the worst, not because they expect it, but because they refuse to be unprepared for anything. When others are blindsided by life's curveballs, they're already adjusting their stance, bat in hand, ready to swing. The sixth sign, you're stepping into Stoic Alpha territory. Your words become deliberate, measured, almost scarce, not because you have nothing to say, but because you understand the power of silence. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, had a simple rule: we've been given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. The Stoic Alpha doesn't just hear this, they embody it. Watch them in a heated debate. They're not the ones dominating the conversation, but the ones absorbing, processing, then striking with precision when they do speak. It's the difference between a thunderstorm that fizzles out and a lightning bolt that lands exactly where it's needed. Contrast this with how most people navigate conflict or negotiation. The insecure executive fills every silence with jargon, afraid that pausing will make them seem unprepared. The social media influencer mistakes volume for value, mistaking likes for influence. But the Stoic Alpha, they're the CEO who listens intently before dismantling an argument with one pointed question. The negotiator who lets the other side exhaust themselves, then calmly states their terms. This isn't passivity, it's tactical restraint. Seneca saw it clearly. Speech is the mirror of the mind. The more disciplined your silence, the sharper your words become when you choose to wield them. History's greatest leaders mastered this. Take George Washington, whose contemporaries noted his ability to command a room without uttering a word, or Angela Merkel, nicknamed the Quiet Chancellor for her habit of listening while others postured. In a world addicted to hot takes and instant reactions, their silence wasn't weakness, it was a calculated advantage. They understood what most miss: the person who controls the pauses controls the conversation. Ever noticed how the most influential person in a meeting often speaks last? That's Stoic listening in action, gathering data, reading the room, then delivering an insight that reframes everything. Modern research backs this ancient wisdom. Studies on negotiation tactics show that parties who pause at least 3 seconds before responding achieve better outcomes. FBI hostage negotiators train to leverage silence, letting the other side reveal more than they intended. Even in everyday interactions, those who listen actively, not just waiting for their turn to talk, build deeper trust and gather more intelligence. The Stoic Alpha doesn't need to prove they're the smartest in the room. Their presence alone does that. Their silence becomes a magnet for attention. When they finally speak, people lean in. But here's where it gets practical. This isn't about bottling up opinions or becoming a wallflower. It's about discerning when your words will land with impact versus when they'll dissolve into noise. Next time you're tempted to interject in a discussion, try this. Count to 5 silently. Notice how often the other person fills that gap with something revealing. Or when receiving criticism, resist the urge to defend immediately. Let the feedback hang in the air. You might uncover its real message beneath the delivery. The Stoic Alpha's greatest tool isn't their eloquence, it's their ability to let silence do the heavy lifting. Zeno's 2-to-1 ratio isn't just about quantity, it's about quality of attention. The Stoic Alpha listens not just to respond, but to understand, and that shift changes everything. When you master strategic silence, your words gain weight. People stop anticipating your next interruption and start anticipating your next insight. In a world drowning in words, the rarest currency isn't more speech, it's the wisdom to know when to withhold it. The 7th sign, you're solidifying as a Stoic Alpha. Praise and criticism land with the same weight, which is to say, almost none at all. Marcus Aurelius left us a mental tool for this exact shift, scribbled in his journals like a personal reminder. You can strip away many unnecessary troubles by seeing things for what they truly are. He called this his bookmark method, noticing opinions as passing thoughts, then closing the chapter on them. Picture this: someone compliments your work, and instead of basking in it, you mentally bookmark it alongside yesterday's weather report. An insult comes your way, same bookmark. This isn't indifference, it's discernment. Psychological studies from Stanford now back this ancient practice. showing that people who detach from external judgments show significantly lower cortisol levels during high-pressure situations. They're not numb, they're selective about what gets to shape their self-concept. Dig into the neuroscience behind this and you'll find something fascinating. When most people receive praise, their brains light up in the same reward centers activated by food or money. Criticism triggers the amygdala like a physical threat. But fMRI scans of seasoned meditators and by extension, those practicing Stoic detachment, reveal something different. The neural fireworks simply don't ignite with the same intensity. It's not that they don't register the feedback, they've trained their minds to observe it without letting it hijack their equilibrium. Think of it like watching a movie. You might feel tension during a dramatic scene, but you never forget you're sitting in a theater. The Stoic Alpha applies that same metacognition to opinions, acknowledging them without being swept away. Consider how this plays out in real time. A young entrepreneur presents their startup to investors. Version 1 hangs on every nod or frown in the room, adjusting their pitch midstream to please. Version 2, the Stoic Alpha, delivers their vision with steady conviction, neither inflated by interest nor derailed by skepticism. They've internalized Marcus's insight. It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own. Modern psychology calls this the spotlight effect, overestimating how much others scrutinize us. The Stoic Alpha corrects for this bias, recognizing that most praise and criticism reveal more about the speaker's preferences than the recipient's worth. History offers striking examples. Thomas Edison faced relentless criticism for his failed light bulb experiments. Journalists mocked the Wright brothers' impossible flying machine. Yet their private notes reveal a common thread: meticulous documentation of feedback followed by deliberate decisions about its utility, not emotional reactions. Edison would jot down detractors' claims, then methodically test them rather than rage or crumble. That's the bookmark method in action, treating opinions as data points, not verdicts. This skill becomes especially crucial in leadership. A study tracking Fortune 500 CEOs found that the most effective leaders shared a paradoxical trait: high openness to feedback coupled with low emotional dependence on it. They'd listen intently to boardroom debates, then sleep soundly after making unpopular calls. Contrast this with leaders who chase universal approval, often indecisive, exhausting themselves in image management. The Stoic Alpha doesn't confuse consensus with correctness. They weigh input soberly, then act from principle. Practical applications abound. Next time you receive a glowing review, try this. Pause to appreciate the sentiment, then ask, does this align with my own assessment? If yes, it confirms your path. If no, it's merely someone's impression. Criticism gets the same treatment. A harsh comment might sting briefly, but the Stoic Alpha quickly shifts to analysis. Is there truth here to improve me, or is this noise? Even social media, a minefield of snap judgments, loses its toxicity when you scroll through opinions like a librarian shelving books, some worth revisiting, most to be catalogued and released. Marcus's bookmark method isn't about dismissing human connection. It's about distinguishing signal from noise in how we're perceived. When a master chef tastes their own dish, they don't need a diner's review to know if the seasoning's right. The Stoic Alpha develops that same internal palate for their choices, able to receive feedback without requiring it to know their worth. That's true emotional sovereignty. Not the absence of care, but the precision of it. There's a moment in every Stoic Alpha's journey when blame stops being an option, not because they're perfect, but because they've embraced a radical truth. Responsibility isn't a burden, it's liberation. This is the eighth sign, crystallized in the ancient Stoic principle of kathaikon, the art of duty done with unflinching integrity. Meet Cato the Younger, the Roman senator who became living proof of this ideal. While politicians around him traded principles for power, Cato's name became synonymous with something rarer: absolute accountability. He didn't just vote against corruption, he lived as if every decision carried the weight of eternity. When Julius Caesar offered him favors to secure his loyalty, Cato didn't just refuse, he doubled down on his convictions, knowing it would cost him everything. His final act, choosing suicide over surrender when the Republic fell, not as a dramatic gesture, but as the ultimate alignment between belief and action. Fast forward to modern boardrooms and relationships, and you'll spot this same rare quality, the refusal to play the victim even when circumstances seem unfair. Imagine two business partners facing a failed venture. One spends weeks pointing fingers at market conditions, unreliable clients, even bad luck. The other, they're the one dissecting their own miscalculations, studying the wreckage for lessons, then personally calling investors to explain what went wrong and how they'll do better. That's Detaching in action. It's not about self-flagellation. It's about recognizing that your sphere of control always includes one thing: your response. This mindset reshapes conflicts in startling ways. Most arguments devolve into "you" statements. You made me feel this. You caused that. The Stoic Alpha flips the script. They're the partner who, after a heated fight, says, "I reacted poorly. Here's how I'll handle it differently." They're the manager who takes ownership of a team's missed deadline without blaming external factors. Psychologists call this an internal locus of control, but Cato would have recognized it as simply doing one's duty to truth, to growth, to the people counting on you. The beauty of this principle lies in its paradox. While others exhaust themselves deflecting blame, the Stoic Alpha conserves energy by cutting straight to accountability. Think of a surgeon who botches a procedure. They could hide behind "the patient was high risk" or "the equipment malfunctioned." Or they could do what renowned surgeon Atul Gawande advocates: publicly document errors to improve protocols. One path preserves ego, the other transforms failure into progress. Relationships thrive under this ethos. Ever noticed how some couples escalate every disagreement into a referendum on character, while others resolve conflicts with startling efficiency? The difference often boils down to ownership. A Stoic Alpha doesn't say, "You never listen." They say, "I didn't communicate clearly, let me rephrase." This isn't conceding, it's commanding the situation by modeling the accountability they expect in return. Cato's legacy isn't about rigid moralism, it's about the freedom that comes when your word becomes your compass. Modern research supports this. A Harvard study found that leaders who admit mistakes inspire more loyalty than those who never stumble. Why? Because perfection is alienating, integrity is magnetic. When you stop outsourcing responsibility, you stop waiting for the world to change before you act. Your career, your relationships, your peace, they're no longer hostages to circumstance. They become artifacts of your choices. So how does this look in practice? Start small. Next time you're late, skip "the traffic was terrible." Try "I didn't leave early enough." When a project misses the mark, list what you do differently before critiquing others. Like Cato facing Caesar's armies, you'll discover an unexpected strength. The less you blame, the more you own. And ownership, it turns out, is the birthplace of every meaningful change. The ninth unmistakable sign you're becoming a Stoic Alpha: you start treating time like the ultimate currency, not just in theory, but in the ruthless allocation of your days. Seneca saw this 2,000 years ago when he wrote on the shortness of life, a blistering indictment of how casually people squander their most finite resource. His words cut deeper today. You live as if you were destined to live forever. No thought of your frailty ever enters your head. The Stoic Alpha doesn't just nod along to this. They audit their hours like an accountant reviewing a ledger, knowing full well that wasted time compounds far more dangerously than wasted money. Consider two archetypes in modern life. The first chases promotions to afford luxury watches, working 80-hour weeks to buy symbols of status they're too exhausted to enjoy. The second, the emerging Stoic Alpha, measures wealth in uninterrupted mornings for deep work, afternoons free for loved ones, and the ability to walk away from toxic obligations without financial panic. This shift isn't about rejecting money, it's about recognizing that time is the one asset you can't replenish. Seneca put it bluntly, it's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. The modern FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, echoes this Stoic priority. Those pursuing FIRE don't just save aggressively, they design lifestyles where time sovereignty trumps traditional markers of success. Take the software engineer who negotiates remote work to eliminate commuting, trading a corner office for 2 extra hours daily with their kids, or the entrepreneur who builds passive income streams not to buy a yacht but to reclaim years for writing that novel. These are modern Seneca's people who have internalized that possessions depreciate but invested time compounds. Even billionaire Warren Buffett embodies this, living in the same modest house for decades while amassing not just wealth, but decades of uninterrupted reading and thinking time. The common thread, they grasp that time poverty is the real bankruptcy. This philosophy reshapes daily decisions in subtle ways. While others scroll mindlessly during spare moments, the Stoic Alpha carries a book or jots ideas. They don't just schedule meetings, they calculate whether the potential payoff justifies hours they'll never get back. And they're masters of what Seneca called defensive time management, setting boundaries so strict they'd seem rude to those still conflating busyness with importance. Picture someone declining a quick coffee that would derail their creative flow, or automating trivial tasks to preserve mental bandwidth. These aren't efficiency hacks, they're declarations that their time deserves protection. The litmus test arrives when life forces a choice between time and money. The Stoic Alpha takes the pay cut for shorter hours. They'll fly economy if it means arriving rested for a pivotal negotiation. They might even walk away from lucrative deals that would chain them to toxic clients for years. Seneca warned of such traps. No one will bring back the years, no one will restore you to yourself. That restoration, the freedom to think, create, and connect without the weight of self-betrayal, is the real wealth. Watching someone transition into this mindset is revelatory. They stop saying, "I don't have time," and start saying, "That's not a priority." Their calendars reflect not just productivity but purpose. And when they do spend money, it's often to buy back time, outsourcing chores, living closer to essentials, or investing in tools that accelerate meaningful work. The Stoic Alpha doesn't retire early to do nothing. They retire now from everything that doesn't align with their highest purpose. Seneca's conclusion still stings centuries later. Life is long if you know how to use it. The Stoic Alpha takes that as both challenge and mantra, refusing to let society's script dictate how their hours are spent. Because when you truly grasp that every later is uncertain, now becomes the only account worth growing. The 10th sign you're solidifying as a Stoic Alpha. Your mornings stop being chaotic reactions and start becoming deliberate preparations. This isn't about productivity hacks or grinding before sunrise. It's about the ancient Stoic practice of premeditatio, a mental armor forged before the day's battles begin. Picture Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, starting each dawn with written reminders of what chaos the world might throw at him, not to dwell on it but to preemptively strengthen his resolve. Or visualize Seneca sitting in stillness, mentally rehearsing how he'd handle insults, delays, and temptations before leaving his home. Fast forward to today, and you'll find Navy SEAL conducting similar battle drills in their minds before missions, CEOs visualizing high-stakes meetings, and elite athletes running through perfect performances in their heads, all modern echoes of this Stoic ritual. Here's how to make it your own. Step 1. Carve out 10 minutes of undisturbed stillness, no phones, no inputs, just you and your thoughts. Begin with what the Stoics called the view from above. Imagine looking down on your day from a cosmic perspective. That meeting you're dreading reduced to a speck in time. the errands annoying you, barely visible from this vantage point. This isn't about diminishing your responsibilities, but seeing them in their true proportion, a remedy for the tunnel vision stress creates. Now shift to anticipatory resilience. Ask yourself 3 brutal questions. What could go wrong today? Not to invite paranoia, but to defang surprises. Maybe your commute will derail, a client will snap, or your patience will fray. The Stoic Alpha doesn't ignore these possibilities, they rehearse them. Visualize the traffic jam, then see yourself calmly calling ahead rather than white-knuckling the wheel. Picture the rude email, then craft in your mind the measured reply you'll send after taking 5 breaths. What temptations will arise? Modern life bombards us with distractions disguised as opportunities. The extra drink that'll fog your focus, the social media rabbit hole that'll eat your productivity, the impulsive purchase that'll strain your budget. By naming these traps in advance, you turn from prey to hunter, spotting them before they spring. What's my anchor when storms hit? Identify one Stoic maxim you'll return to when pressured. Maybe it's Epictetus's, first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do, or Seneca's, all cruelty springs from weakness. Write it on your wrist if you must. This becomes your mental reset button. Next, set intentions, not goals. Goals focus on outcomes you can't fully control. Intentions govern your conduct regardless of results. Instead of close the deal, try listen deeply and advocate ethically. Rather than avoid arguments, choose respond to provocation with curiosity, not combat. The Stoic Alpha knows external success is fickle, internal consistency is power, close with a gratitude inversion. Most people list what they're thankful for. Stoics take it further. Marcus would remind himself that even the annoying colleague was an opportunity to practice patience, the delayed flight a chance to read. Try this, pick 3 potential frustrations and reframe them as training. The long queue, a drill in stillness. The demanding boss, a sparring partner for your communication skills. The cold shower, a lesson in embracing discomfort. Modern science validates this ritual. Studies on implementation intentions show that people who mentally simulate challenges and responses are 30% more likely to follow through. Brain scans reveal that visualization activates the same neurons as physical action, essentially pre-programming your responses, and gratitude practices are proven to lower cortisol by up to 23%, giving you a biochemical edge before the day starts. The Stoic morning ritual isn't about positive thinking, it's about clear thinking. While others hit snooze until chaos forces them awake, you're already 2 moves ahead. Not because the day will bend to your will, but because your will has been tempered to meet any day. The 11th unmistakable sign you're embodying the Stoic Alpha mindset. You start seeking discomfort, not as punishment, but as training ground. The ancient Stoics called this ascesis, voluntary hardship, to strengthen resilience. While most people build their lives around avoiding discomfort, the Stoic Alpha deliberately steps into it, knowing that just as muscles tear to grow stronger, emotional capacity expands through deliberate challenge. Neuroscience now confirms what Seneca practiced 2,000 years ago. Brief, controlled stressors like cold exposure or fasting trigger the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that literally rewires neural pathways for greater emotional regulation. Take cold showers, a favorite tool among modern Stoics. At first glance, it seems masochistic. Why willingly endure something unpleasant? But beneath the surface, something profound happens. That initial shock when icy water hits your skin mirrors life's unexpected jolts. A sudden job loss, a betrayal, a health scare. By practicing calm breathing and mental focus under controlled cold, you're conditioning your nervous system to handle larger adversities. Studies at the University of Oulu found regular cold exposure reduced stress hormones by 26% while increasing willpower reserves. No wonder icons like athlete Wim Hof and investor Tim Ferriss swear by it, not because they enjoy discomfort, but because they've learned to harness it. Digital fasting works the same way. Most people reach for their phones within minutes of waking, craving dopamine hits from notifications. The Stoic Alpha periodically disconnects not as a detox but as resistance training for attention. Researchers at UC Irvine discovered that just 5 days without social media reshapes prefrontal cortex activity, strengthening focus and reducing anxiety. Imagine two professionals facing a tight deadline, one constantly refreshing emails, the other working in 90-minute distraction-free blocks. The difference isn't discipline, it's practiced comfort with discomfort. But here's where Stoics diverge from modern biohackers. The goal isn't optimized performance, it's expanded sovereignty. When Epictetus slept on a thin mat or Musonius Rufus ate simple meals, they weren't chasing productivity. They were proving to themselves that comfort couldn't dictate their peace. Modern life offers endless escapes: streaming, junk food, endless scrolling, all designed to cushion reality. The Stoic Alpha periodically strips these away, not as deprivation but to remember, I am more than my conveniences. Practical applications abound. Try the Stoic Weekend. Carry only cash, leave your phone at home, wear your simplest clothes. Notice how discomfort highlights your dependencies, then realize none of them own you. Or adopt what the ancients called the poverty meal. Once a week, eat plain bread and water, not to save money, but to reconnect with sufficiency. These exercises reveal a liberating truth: most luxuries we chase are cages in disguise. The real test comes when life imposes involuntary hardship. The Stoic Alpha, who's practiced cold showers, meets a broken heater in winter with equanimity. The one who's fasted from digital noise handles a dead phone battery with calm resourcefulness. Neuroscientists call this stress inoculation, small doses of discomfort creating immunity to larger shocks. Just as vaccines introduce weakened viruses to build antibodies, voluntary hardship prepares you for inevitable adversity. This isn't about glorifying suffering. It's about dismantling the illusion that ease equals happiness. The Stoic Alpha knows true freedom lies not in avoiding discomfort, but in transcending its power to disturb you. When you can stand in an ice-cold shower and smile, you've proven something profound to yourself, that most limits are mental, and what doesn't break you becomes your leverage. The 12th sign: you're embracing the Stoic Alpha path. Judgment begins to dissolve into curiosity, not because you've gone soft, but because you've grasped Epictetus's razor-sharp insight. People are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of them. Picture two co-workers receiving the same critical feedback. One spirals into resentment, convinced their boss has it out for them. The other pauses to ask, what if this isn't personal? What if it's just data? That shift from reflexive blame to deliberate understanding is the Stoic Alpha's secret to navigating human friction without internalizing it. Consider how this plays out in daily conflicts. Most arguments escalate because we assume malicious intent. A curt email means disrespect. A missed call proves neglect. The Stoic Alpha defaults to a different question. What unseen factors could explain this? Maybe the short-tempered colleague is battling a sick child at home. Perhaps the aloof friend is drowning in deadlines. This isn't about excusing poor behavior. It's about recognizing that everyone operates from private struggles you can't see. Ancient Stoics trained this muscle through prosoché, mindful attention to their own snap judgments. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil. Not as condemnation, but as context, modern psychology confirms this approach. Stanford's fundamental attribution error research shows we judge others by their actions. They're lazy, but explain our own behavior through circumstances. I'm exhausted. The Stoic Alpha corrects this bias deliberately. Before labeling someone difficult, they inventory possible hidden variables. sleep deprivation, financial stress, cultural differences. A manager applying this might reframe an underperforming employee's slump not as laziness, but as mismatched role fit, leading to a productive reassignment rather than a punitive write-up. Relationships transform under this lens. Ever noticed how some couples turn minor annoyances, dirty dishes, tardiness into character indictments? You never respect me. The Stoic Alpha intervenes with what therapists call generous assumptions. Instead of "you're ignoring me," they try, "you must be swamped when's a good time to connect." The outcome differs not because the facts changed, but because the narrative did. Epictetus offered a litmus test. If someone handed your body to a passerby, you'd be outraged. Why do you hand your mind to anyone who insults you? The Stoic Alpha guards their peace not by controlling others' actions, but by mastering their interpretations. Workplace dynamics reveal this principle's power. Studies on psychological safety in teams show that when leaders model non-judgmental curiosity, "Help me understand your perspective," instead of "That's a terrible idea," innovation flourishes. Google's Project Aristotle identified this as the defining trait of high-performing teams. The Stoic Alpha doesn't just tolerate dissent, they mine it for insights, knowing that even flawed arguments contain slivers of truth. Imagine a startup founder hearing criticism of their flagship product. The reactive version dismisses it as ignorance. The Stoic Alpha version asks, "What valid needs are these complaints pointing to?" This mindset extends to self-judgment too. Most people brutalize themselves over mistakes. "I'm such an idiot for failing." The Stoic Alpha investigates instead. What conditions led to this? What systems need adjusting? They treat their own stumbles with the same forensic neutrality they'd apply to a stranger's. Seneca captured this perfectly. Every guilty person is their own hangman. The Stoic Alpha opts out of that self-flagellation, choosing understanding over condemnation, not to avoid accountability, but to enforce it more effectively. The ultimate test comes when facing genuine malice. Even here, the Stoic Alpha seeks understanding before retaliation. Marcus wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." When slandered, they assess the source. Is this person hurting, insecure, misinformed? Then respond from principle rather than mirroring the pettiness. History's great peacemakers, from Mandela to Gandhi, embodied this. Mandela studied his jailer's language and customs not to excuse oppression, but to disarm it through unshakable dignity. Epictetus's revelation wasn't that external events don't matter. It's that our judgments about them matter more. The Stoic Alpha doesn't walk through life wearing rose-colored glasses. They walk through life holding a mirror, asking first, "How am I framing this? What story am I telling?" That's the alchemy. Turn judgment into inquiry, and every conflict becomes curriculum. The 13th sign: you're embodying the Stoic Alpha mindset. You become obsessed with effort, not just as a means to an end, but as the end itself. The ancient Stoics captured this with their archer analogy. A master archer can draw the bow flawlessly, aim true, and release with perfect form. But once that arrow leaves the string, the wind, a sudden movement of the target, or sheer luck determines where it lands. The Stoic archer's job isn't to control the outcome. It's to control everything leading up to the release. That's the essence of focusing on effort over outcomes, not because results don't matter, but because they're never fully yours to command. Modern athletes live this principle daily. Consider a professional basketball player at the free throw line. They can rehearse their routine 10,000 times, same stance, same grip, same breath, but a gust of arena air or a flicker of distraction might still send the ball veering off. The Stoic Alpha doesn't fixate on the miss, they audit the process. Did they maintain composure, execute their pre-shot ritual, adjust for fatigue? This is why coaches like Phil Jackson, who leaned on Zen and Stoic principles, drilled his players on mindfulness under pressure rather than obsessing over scoreboards. Championships are won in the relentless refinement of controllables, not in white-knuckling over uncontrollables. Investors following the Stoic path apply the same logic. Warren Buffett famously separates his circle of competence from the noise of markets. He'll analyze a company's fundamentals for months, evaluating management, cash flow, competitive advantages, but once he buys shares, he doesn't waste energy on daily stock fluctuations. His journal, much like Marcus Aurelius's, likely contains reminders to focus on analysis quality, not ticker movements. The result, while day traders burn out chasing unpredictable price swings, the Stoic investor sleeps soundly, knowing their effort was rigorous, even if a recession temporarily tanks their portfolio. Creative work thrives under this ethos too. J.K. Rowling didn't write Harry Potter with a guarantee it would sell millions. She wrote because the story demanded to be told, crafting each sentence with care, even as 12 publishers rejected her manuscript. The Stoic Alpha approaching creative projects asks, did I honor the work? Was my discipline unwavering? Not will this go viral? Composer Ludwig van Beethoven, deaf and disillusioned, poured his soul into his late quartets knowing most audiences wouldn't understand them. His notebooks reveal a man obsessed with craftsmanship, not acclaim. Centuries later, those pieces are considered master works not because he chased success, but because he surrendered to the labor itself. This mindset dismantles two toxic modern myths, that outcomes validate effort and that suffering is optional. The Stoic Alpha knows better. They've internalized that you can do everything right and still fail, just as you can stumble into success through sheer luck. What matters isn't the trophy or the paycheck, it's the integrity of your daily grind. A researcher might spend years on a breakthrough that never comes, but if their methodology was sound, their curiosity unbounded, their resilience unbroken, they've lived the Stoic archer's ideal. Practical applications are everywhere. The entrepreneur launching a product focuses on customer interviews and iterative design, not overnight virality. The student preparing for exams prioritizes consistent study habits over fixating on a single test score. Even in parenting, the Stoic Alpha measures success not by a child's accolades, but by the quality of guidance offered and values modeled. The shift reveals itself in subtle ways. After a presentation, you'll find yourself reviewing your preparation, not the audience's applause. When a project flops, you'll mine it for lessons rather than masking it with excuses. And when success does come, you'll appreciate it, then promptly return to the work, because the true reward was never the outcome anyway. It was always the effort itself, the arrow pulled back with unwavering focus, released into a world you can't control but will always strive to meet with your best shot. The 14th sign, you're truly stepping into Stoic Alpha territory. You begin feeling genuine gratitude for challenges, not in some superficial, sugar-coated way, but with the deep understanding that friction is what forges resilience. Seneca captured this perfectly when he wrote, "Fire tests gold, adversity tests strong men." That metaphor holds scientific weight today. Metallurgists will tell you gold's purity is proven by withstanding extreme heat. The impurities burn away, leaving only the untainted metal. The Stoic Alpha recognizes the same principle applies to character. Those prison of war survival stories you've heard, they're not just tales of endurance, they're masterclasses in this mindset. Take Admiral James Stockdale, shot down over Vietnam and held in the infamous Hanoi Hilton for 7 years. Tortured routinely, denied basic comforts, kept in solitary confinement. He later credited Stoicism for his survival. But here's the striking part. In his memoir, he didn't portray the experience as mere suffering to overcome. He described it as the making of him, writing, "I never lost faith in the end of the story. I never doubted not only that I would get out, but also that I would prevail in the end and turn the experience into the defining event of my life." That's fire test thinking in action. The broken bones and isolation didn't break him. They burned away everything but his indomitable will. modern psychology confirms what Stoics intuited: post-traumatic growth is real. Studies tracking survivors of natural disasters, serious illnesses, and combat find that approximately 70% report positive psychological changes following adversity: greater appreciation for life, deeper relationships, increased personal strength. The key differentiator: how they framed the challenge. Those who asked, "Why is this happening to me?" floundered. Those who asked, "What is this revealing about me?" transformed. You'll spot this mentality in everyday Stoic Alphas too. The entrepreneur who loses everything in a startup failure only to bounce back with sharper business acumen. The athlete whose career-ending injury leads them to coach others with unprecedented insight. Even in smaller doses, the missed promotion that forces skill building, the breakup that sparks self-discovery, the pattern holds. What seems like punishment in the moment often proves to be preparation in retrospect. This isn't about romanticizing suffering. It's about recognizing that comfort rarely catalyzes growth. Just as bones need stress to stay strong and forests require periodic fires to regenerate, human potential often lies dormant until circumstances demand its emergence. The Stoic Alpha doesn't seek pain, but when it arrives, as it inevitably does, they greet it as the most exacting teacher they'll ever have. That shift from "why me?" to "try me" changes everything, not because the challenge lessens, but because your capacity to meet it expands. So next time life turns up the heat, remember, gold doesn't complain about the furnace. It simply becomes more itself in the flames. The 15th undeniable sign: you're embracing the Stoic Alpha path. Your journal transforms from a notebook into a training ground, a philosophical gym where you sculpt resilience one reflection at a time. Marcus Aurelius never intended his meditations for publication. Those parchment pages were his private battleground to confront weakness and reinforce virtue. 2 millennia later, neuroscience reveals why this practice endures. Journaling about challenges reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center, while strengthening prefrontal cortex connections for better emotional regulation. The Stoic Alpha doesn't just jot down daily events. They conduct what modern psychologists call cognitive restructuring, using ancient prompts to reframe modern struggles. Start with the Stoic evening audit perfected by Seneca. Before sleep, ask 3 questions with brutal honesty. Where did I act against my principles today? Not what went wrong, but where your actions diverged from your ethos: the harsh email sent in frustration, the workout skipped out of laziness. Next, what hardship could I have met with more courage? That awkward conversation deferred, the criticism taken too personally. Finally, what's one action tomorrow that would make today's self proud? This isn't self-help fluff, it's deliberate neural rewiring. Studies show individuals who practice such nightly reflections exhibit 23% greater emotional resilience over 6 months compared to control groups. Now layer in Marcus's morning ritual. Upon waking, he'd write anticipatory reminders, not affirmations, but stark realities. Today you'll meet meddling people, ingratitude, arrogance. Modernize this with a premeditation prompt. What 3 obstacles might derail my focus today, and how will I navigate them? If you've got a high-stakes meeting, preemptively script responses to potential objections. If social media drains you, note the exact time you'll disable notifications. This primes what behavioral scientists call implementation intentions, increasing follow-through by 200%. For daily challenges, adopt Epictetus's dichotomy of control template. Draw 2 columns: what's within my power and what isn't. The first might list your preparation, attitude, and effort. The second covers others' opinions, outcomes, or delays. The act of writing this distinction, physically seeing it, triggers what neuroscientists call the generation effect, embedding the lesson deeper than passive reading. When frustration bubbles over a delayed flight, you'll instinctively visualize that page, redirecting energy from cursing airlines to revising your schedule. Modern productivity hacks can merge seamlessly with Stoic rigor. Try time-blocking journaling, 30 minutes weekly to review entries with a highlighter marking patterns. Maybe you'll notice defensiveness spikes when sleep-deprived, or that financial anxiety diminishes after budgeting sessions. The Stoic Alpha doesn't just record life, they reverse engineer it. Entrepreneur and Stoic practitioner Tim Ferriss combines this with fear setting, writing down worst-case scenarios for decisions, then strategizing mitigation plans. It's premeditatio malorum meets modern risk assessment. Your journal should also include virtue victories, small but significant moments where you chose integrity over convenience. That time you admitted fault instead of deflecting blame, or when you listened deeply instead of waiting to speak. These become psychological footholds during future struggles. Military psychologists found soldiers who documented such honorable actions in journals showed 19% greater stress tolerance in combat simulations. For digital minimalists, a hybrid approach works: voice memos for morning reflections, a notes app for midday observations, then longhand at night to consolidate insights. The medium matters less than the methodology. Marcus didn't have bullet journals or apps, but his leather-bound pages held the raw material of a philosopher king's growth. The true test comes when you review old entries. A year's worth of pages should reveal evolution, fewer rants about uncontrollables, more strategic responses, less why me, and more try me. That's when you'll know the journal is no longer just a tool. It's become the whetstone that keeps your Stoic edge razor sharp. The 16th unmistakable sign you're embodying the Stoic Alpha. Emergencies no longer hijack your reason, they reveal it. This isn't about suppressing natural adrenaline, but about the Stoic reserve clause in action, preparing mentally to accept whatever outcome arises while focusing entirely on what you can control in the moment. History offers striking examples, like the Roman general Scipio Africanus facing Hannibal's war elephants at the Battle of Zama. While his soldiers panicked at the monstrous creatures charging toward them, Scipio had trained his men to respond not to the terror, but to the tactical vulnerability, the elephant's blind spots when turning. His calm command turned what should have been a rout into one of history's most decisive victories. Modern neuroscience explains what the ancients practiced intuitively. When crisis hits the amygdala, your brain's smoke detector, floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline. For most people, this creates tunnel vision, racing thoughts, impulsive reactions. But fMRI scans of elite emergency responders show something different. Their prefrontal cortex remains engaged, allowing them to assess threats while maintaining operational clarity. They've essentially done what the Stoics prescribed: pre-rehearsed disasters until their neural pathways respond with precision rather than panic. Compare two pilots encountering sudden engine failure mid-flight. The untrained mind fixates on the impending crash, hands trembling on the controls. The Stoic Alpha pilot, they're already methodically running through emergency protocols, declaring mayday, troubleshooting ignition, preparing for glide landing because they've mentally simulated this scenario dozens of times. Aviation training intentionally mimics this Stoic approach. Commercial pilots spend 70% of simulator sessions practicing emergency procedures, not routine flights. The result: when real crises strike, their actions come from trained reflex, not blind fear. Medical professionals demonstrate this daily. A surgeon encountering unexpected bleeding doesn't freeze or flee. They categorize it arterial or venous, locate the source, and clamp with steady hands. Studies at Johns Hopkins found that the most composed surgeons under pressure share one habit. They mentally review possible complications before each procedure, much like Seneca visualizing loss before it occurred. This preparation creates what psychologists call cognitive templates, mental blueprints that bypass panic when reality matches a rehearsed scenario. Even in everyday emergencies, a car swerving into your lane, a child choking at dinner, the pattern holds. The Stoic Alpha has either trained for these moments, CPR certification, defensive driving courses, or cultivated the mental discipline to focus exclusively on next steps rather than worst-case scenarios. Their secret isn't fearlessness, but understanding that calmness is a form of power. As Marcus Aurelius wrote during the Antonine Plague, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This explains why Navy SEAL endure Hell Week, why firefighters run drills in smoke-filled buildings, why astronauts train for equipment failures. They're not just practicing skills, they're conditioning their nervous systems to interpret crisis as familiar territory rather than existential threat. The Stoic Alpha applies this principle beyond professions. They approach financial crashes, family emergencies, even social conflicts with the same trained response: assess, adapt, act. The ultimate test comes when preparation meets chaos. In 2008, when US Airways Flight 1549 hit a flock of geese, Captain Sully Sullenberger didn't waste energy cursing fate or fearing the inevitable headlines. His 30-second decision to ditch in the Hudson River reflected decades of disciplined training and, as his later interviews revealed, a stoic mindset honed through military service. Every passenger survived because one man's amygdala didn't get a vote in that cockpit. This is the reserve clause in its purest form, giving your absolute all to influence what you can while making peace with what you cannot. The Stoic Alpha doesn't avoid emergencies, they transform them into the very situations where their training shines brightest. When others are still gasping at the flames, they're already reaching for the extinguisher, not because they're unfeeling, but because they've learned a profound truth: panic is a luxury no one can afford. The 17th sign: you're becoming a Stoic Alpha. You start seeing your life and every decision in it from 10,000 feet up. The ancient Stoics called this the view from above, a mental exercise where you imagine observing Earth from cosmic heights, watching human dramas shrink to insignificance. Cities become specks, empires fade into geography, and your personal struggles, barely visible brushstrokes on a vast canvas. This isn't about diminishing your experiences, but about gaining perspective, the kind that transforms how you allocate your time, energy, and ambition. SpaceX embodies this principle in modern innovation. When Elon Musk founded the company in 2002, conventional wisdom said private space travel was fantasy. But Musk wasn't thinking in quarterly reports or even decades. He was operating on what he calls the time scale of civilization. While competitors optimized for next year's profits, SpaceX's team visualized Martian colonies and interplanetary transport systems. That long lens allowed them to endure early failures, 3 rocket explosions in a row, because they weren't just building rockets, they were making humanity multiplanetary. The view from above doesn't eliminate obstacles, it reveals which ones are worth scaling. Apply this to personal choices. Picture 2 professionals offered lucrative jobs, one at a stable corporation, the other at a risky startup. The short-term view fixates on salary and security. The Stoic Alpha's aerial perspective asks tougher questions. Which path aligns with my legacy? Where can I grow, not just earn? History's most impactful figures, from Leonardo da Vinci to Marie Curie, shared this trait. They worked as if future generations were watching, because they were. Financial decisions sharpen under this lens. Most people chase quick returns, hopping between stocks or crypto trends. Those practicing the view from above invest like Warren Buffett, analyzing companies through the question, would I buy this entire business to hold for a century? It's why Buffett drinks 5 Cokes daily. He doesn't bet on quarterly earnings, but on enduring human habits. The Stoic Alpha approaches health the same way. That midnight snack isn't just a craving, it's data point 10,000 in a lifelong dataset. Relationships deepen when viewed from altitude. Petty arguments lose urgency when you imagine your last conversation with this person. Marcus Aurelius meditated daily on mortality, not to be morbid but to prioritize. Is this conflict worth my finite time? Modern research on death awareness confirms its surprising effect. People who regularly contemplate life's brevity make bolder, more meaningful choices. The practice reaches its zenith in crisis. When Stoic philosopher Posidonius was struck with crippling arthritis, he didn't lament his pain. He invited friends to debate philosophy at his bedside, joking that the illness could torment his body but never his mind. From ground level, agony dominated. From the cosmic view, it was a fleeting challenge in a life rich with learning and connection. Try this tonight. Step outside, look at the stars, and mentally zoom out. Your deadlines, rivalries, and worries won't vanish, but they'll settle into their true proportion. The Stoic Alpha doesn't ignore life's immediacies. They navigate them with a star chart in hand, knowing some storms aren't worth weathering when the galaxy beckons. The 18th undeniable sign: you're stepping into Stoic Alpha territory. You stop waiting for permission, slips from the universe, and start acting with the quiet authority of someone who answers to their own principles. Picture Agrippinus, the Roman senator who refused to play Nero's games literally. When the emperor commanded him to participate in musical competitions, knowing Agrippinus despised such frivolities, he didn't begrudgingly comply or stage a public protest. He simply continued his philosophical studies, telling Nero's messengers, "I'm otherwise engaged." This wasn't rebellion for spectacle, it was the ultimate assertion of self-governance. While others scrambled for the tyrant's approval, Agrippinus demonstrated what true power looks like: the ability to define your own terms without announcing them. Modern innovators channel this same energy. Consider Sarah Blakely cutting up pantyhose in her apartment before Spanx revolutionized shapewear. No one gave her a permission slip to reinvent an industry. Or look at Banksy's first street pieces, sprayed without municipal consent or gallery validation. These aren't reckless acts, but deliberate demonstrations of what Stoics called autarkeia, self-sufficiency that recognizes external authorities don't hold veto power over meaningful action. The entrepreneur pitching investors after 20 rejections, the artist releasing work without waiting for critic approval, the employee proposing an unconventional solution despite hierarchy. These are today's Agrippinuses. This mindset dismantles the myth of legitimate versus illegitimate paths. History's greatest breakthroughs often came from those operating outside established protocols. Rosa Parks didn't wait for legislation to refuse her bus seat. The Wright brothers had no aerospace degrees. Modern examples abound. Wikipedia overtook Encyclopedia Britannica without academic gatekeepers. Airbnb reshaped hospitality without owning real estate. And OpenAI disrupted education without Ivy League credentials. The Stoic Alpha recognizes that waiting for permission often means waiting forever, because systems designed to maintain stability rarely reward those who challenge it. But here's where Stoic self-authorization differs from mere defiance. Agrippinus wasn't thumbing his nose at Nero for applause. He was honoring his own values with such consistency that the emperor's demands became irrelevant. This same principle fuels sustainable innovation. Tesla didn't just reject auto industry norms, they built better cars. Kendrick Lamar didn't merely bypass record labels, he redefined what hip-hop could articulate. The Stoic Alpha's refusal to seek permission isn't about rejection, but about creation so compelling it renders old rules obsolete. The practical shift is subtle but profound. You'll notice it when drafting that email asking for approval and suddenly deleting the request, just acting instead. Or when bypassing industry standard practices because your data suggests a better way. Even socially, the Stoic Alpha doesn't poll friends before pursuing an unconventional relationship or lifestyle choice. They inform themselves thoroughly, then proceed with the quiet confidence of someone who knows their judgment deserves at least as much respect as others. Agrippina's final lesson: when Nero eventually ordered his execution, the philosopher greeted death with the same equipoise he'd shown life. "We'll see how brave you are when it's your turn," sneered a guard. Agrippinus, reportedly timing his own death throes, replied, "Is this supposed to hurt?" His last act of defining reality on his terms. The Stoic Alpha carries that same sovereignty into smaller battles, the meeting where they present ideas without prefacing, "Sorry if this is stupid," the gym where they train despite not looking athletic, the life they build without benchmarks from others' highlight reels. Permission isn't taken, it's declared through action, and that changes everything. The 19th sign: you're embodying the Stoic Alpha. Anger no longer controls you, you control it, transforming its raw heat into focused energy. Seneca, who wrote an entire treatise on anger, likened unchecked rage to falling into a well with your eyes open, yet he didn't advocate for passive acceptance. His distinction between destructive fury and channeled indignation becomes clearest when you examine modern movements for justice. Picture two responses to systemic inequality. One person smashes storefronts in blind frustration, their actions blurring the message. Another organizes voter registration drives, files strategic lawsuits, or builds community programs using that same moral outrage as propulsion. Both feel anger's fire, only one forges it into tools. Seneca's three-step anger management protocol remains startlingly relevant. First, the pause, delaying reaction long enough for reason to intervene. Ancient Romans would literally count to 24 before responding to provocation. Modern neuroscience validates this. The 6-second rule for emotional regulation allows cortisol levels to drop enough for prefrontal engagement. Next comes perspective taking, asking, as Seneca did, "What part of this is my misperception?" A Stoic Alpha cut off in traffic might consider the other driver's unseen emergency rather than assuming malice. Finally, purposeful redirection, converting anger's adrenaline into constructive action. When Microsoft engineer Sarah Bond experienced workplace discrimination, she didn't just vent. She co-founded the nonprofit Blacks at Microsoft, turning personal frustration into institutional change. Historical contrasts reveal this principle's power. Compare the 1992 Los Angeles riots' chaotic destruction with the disciplined marches of the civil rights movement. Both stemmed from legitimate grievances, but Martin Luther King Jr. trained activists in what Stoics would call apatheia, not absence of feeling but mastery of it. Protesters endured police dogs and jeers without retaliating, making their moral clarity undeniable. Seneca would recognize King's strategy. The best way to avenge yourself is to not become like the one who wronged you. This transformation plays out personally too. A Stoic Alpha passed over for promotion might initially burn with resentment, then channel that energy into upskilling or launching a side venture. Studies on competitive arousal show that individuals who reframe rivalry as motivation outperform those consumed by spite. Even in relationships, indignation over broken promises can fuel boundary setting rather than grudges. The key lies in Seneca's insight. Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. Modern psychology agrees. Harvard research identifies cold anger, the focused, determined state of activists like Greta Thunberg, as more effective than hot anger for sustained impact. Thunberg's climate strikes exemplify Stoic indignation. Her sharp critiques of world leaders come with meticulously researched solutions, not just outrage. The Stoic Alpha emulates this balance, asking not just what's wrong, but what's needed. Practical applications abound. Next time anger flares, try Seneca's writing exercise. Draft a blistering letter to whoever provoked you, then burn it. The physical act releases tension while the delay prevents rash action. Or adopt the anger to action rule. For every minute spent venting about a problem, spend 10 working on its solution. Activists like Nelson Mandela embodied this, converting 27 years of wrongful imprisonment into a blueprint for reconciliation rather than retribution. The ultimate test comes when facing true injustice. The Stoic Alpha doesn't suppress righteous anger, they distill it. Like a blacksmith tempering steel, they know uncontrolled heat destroys tools, while measured fire shapes instruments of change. Whether confronting personal betrayals or societal ills, they ask Seneca's defining question: will this emotion serve my purpose or sabotage it? That discernment turns wildfire into forge fire and transforms victims into architects. The 20th sign: you're embodying the Stoic Alpha mindset. You start measuring success by the integrity of your effort rather than the glitter of trophies. This is arete, the ancient Greek concept of excellence rooted in moral character that the Stoics adopted as their North Star. Picture Olympic weightlifter Pyrrhos Dimas at the 2004 Athens Games. Injured and struggling, he could have taken painkillers to push through for gold. Instead, he withdrew, telling reporters, "I refuse to disrespect my body or my sport by pretending I'm whole when I'm not." That decision cost him a 4th consecutive Olympic title, but cemented his legacy as an athlete who valued virtue over victory. Compare this to modern win-at-all-costs mentalities, the doping scandals in cycling, the academic fraud in college admissions, the corporate leaders cooking books for short-term gains. The Stoic Alpha recognizes these as what they are, not triumphs but thefts. You haven't outplayed the system, you've robbed yourself of the chance to know what you're truly capable of. Seneca saw this clearly. A victory earned through foul play is no victory at all. Arete manifests in subtler ways daily. It's the salesperson who walks away from a lucrative deal because the product isn't right for the client. The student who cites sources meticulously even when no professor would catch the omission. The parent who coaches their child's team to focus on teamwork rather than racking up blowout wins. These choices don't make headlines, but they build what the Stoics called eudaimonia, flourishing that comes from living in alignment with your highest principles. History offers striking contrasts. When Jesse Owens raced in Nazi Germany at the 1936 Olympics, he wasn't just competing for medals. His very presence rebutted theories of racial superiority. Decades later, he'd say his proudest moment wasn't the 4 golds, but the friendship he forged with German long jumper Luz Long, who risked reprisal by publicly congratulating him. That's arete in action, competition that elevates rather than degrades. Modern neuroscience validates this ancient wisdom. Brain scans show that when people act against their values, the anterior cingulate cortex, the brain's conflict monitor, fires relentlessly, draining willpower. Conversely, integrity activates reward circuits normally associated with tangible achievements. The Stoic Alpha doesn't resist temptation because they're disciplined. They've rewired their brain to find deeper satisfaction in doing right. This isn't about rejecting ambition. The Stoic Alpha strives fiercely, but defines the arena differently. Chess grandmaster Magnus Carlsen once resigned a winning position upon realizing he'd made an unfair move unnoticed by his opponent. In that moment, checkmate mattered less than how he played the game. Similarly, when Patagonia founder Yvon Chouinard transferred ownership of his billion-dollar company to fight climate change, he demonstrated that true victory isn't accumulating wealth but deploying it purposefully. The litmus test comes when no one's watching. Do you still follow the rules when cheating would go undetected? Do you honor commitments even when they're inconvenient? The Stoic Alpha does, not for praise, but because they've internalized Epictetus's dictum. First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you must. Arete turns every moment into a referendum on character. The missed shot becomes an opportunity to congratulate the opponent. The business setback reveals whether you'll cut corners or innovate ethically. Even in conflict, the Stoic Alpha seeks resolution, not domination, because they know crushing others leaves you standing alone in the rubble. In a world obsessed with metrics, likes, clicks, quarterly earnings, The Stoic Alpha carries an invisible plumb line, the quiet certainty that how you play the game doesn't just reflect who you are, it determines who you become. That's the paradox of Arete: lose by the world's standards while staying true to your own, and you've won something no one can take away. The 21st unmistakable sign you're embracing the Stoic Alpha way. You no longer fear solitude, you cultivate it, not in the brooding, lonely way society often caricatures, but with the deliberate intensity of an athlete training in isolation before a championship. The ancient Stoics weren't hermits, but they recognized what modern neuroscience now confirms. Regular doses of solitude aren't just beneficial, they're essential for peak cognitive function. Epictetus, born a slave and later one of Rome's most influential thinkers, would spend hours in quiet reflection despite the chaos around him, his famous lectures. They weren't delivered to packed halls, but in the stillness of his modest school, where students came to engage deeply rather than perform socially. Fast forward to today's hyper-connected world, and you'll find a silent epidemic of what psychologists call a loneliness, the anxiety people feel when disconnected from digital chatter. Smartphone addiction studies reveal the average person checks their device 150 times daily, with dopamine hits from notifications creating a neurological leash. Contrast this with the Stoic Alpha's approach. They're the ones sitting in a cafe without scrolling, taking long walks without podcasts, or dedicating Sunday mornings to undisturbed reading. It's not that they reject connection, they simply refuse to let constant noise drown out their inner dialogue. Neuroimaging studies at Harvard spotlight why this matters. Participants who spent regular time alone showed increased gray matter density in brain regions linked to emotional regulation and complex problem solving. Another study at Durham University found that people who practiced digital detoxes, even brief ones, performed 28% better on creativity tests than their always online peers. The Stoic Alpha doesn't just tolerate solitude, they leverage it as a strategic advantage. While others fritter away mental bandwidth reacting to endless inputs, the Stoic Alpha's mind remains a calibrated instrument sharpened in silence. Consider how this plays out in high-pressure environments. Two executives face a crisis. One compulsively checks Slack, texts colleagues for reassurance, and crowdsources opinions. The other, they retreat to a quiet space, map options clearly, and return with decisive action. Military snipers understand this principle intimately. Their most critical training happens in isolation, learning to steady their breath and focus without external validation. The Stoic Alpha treats everyday decisions with similar discipline, knowing that solitude isn't emptiness, it's the blank canvas where originality emerges. Practical applications are everywhere. Try the Stoic Silence Hour, 60 minutes daily without spoken or digital words, just thinking, journaling, or walking. It's not meditation in the traditional sense, it's active engagement with your own mind. Or adopt what psychologists call solitude scaffolding. Start with 15 minutes of device-free time, then expand gradually. The key lies in reframing alone time not as deprivation but as recalibration. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals, nowhere can a person find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in their own soul. The modern twist, solitude has become the ultimate status symbol. While masses chase viral validation, the Stoic Alpha invests in what billionaire investor Ray Dalio calls thoughtful disagreement, debating ideas with themselves first. They're the writers who draft before seeking edits, the entrepreneurs who vet ideas internally before pitching, the leaders who form convictions before polling opinions. In a world screaming for attention, the real power move isn't shouting louder, it's knowing when to step away and listen to the one voice that truly shapes your path, your own. The 22nd sign you're embodying the Stoic Alpha. Misfortune stops crippling you and starts cracking you up, not as denial but as defiance. The ancient Stoics took this to legendary extremes. Chrysippus, one of Stoicism's founding thinkers, reportedly died from laughter after watching his drunk donkey attempt to eat figs. Whether fact or folklore, the message rings true. When life gets absurd, sometimes the most powerful response isn't solemnity, it's satire directed at the chaos itself. Modern psychology confirms what Chrysippus intuited. Cancer support groups report that patients who cultivate humor experience 23% lower stress hormones than those who don't. It's not about making light of suffering, but about refusing to let suffering dictate your emotional range. Take bankrupt entrepreneurs who rebound strongest. Research from the Kaufman Foundation found they share an uncanny habit, reframing disasters as dark comedy. One founder who lost millions joked about turning his failed startup's office plants into a corporate survival garden. Another sold his company's leftover branded mugs as artifacts from the dot-com bubble 2.0. This isn't avoidance, it's alchemy. By injecting levity into loss, they prevent setbacks from metastasizing into identity crises. The Stoic Alpha doesn't laugh instead of grieving. They laugh while rebuilding, understanding that humor and hardship can coexist. Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl captured this duality in Man's Search for Meaning, describing prisoners who crafted jokes about camp conditions not to minimize horror, but to assert that terror hadn't extinguished their humanity. The mechanism works neurologically. When you crack a joke about your failed project or botched presentation, your brain releases endorphins that counteract cortisol, the stress hormone. fMRI scans show that humor activates the medial prefrontal cortex, the same region involved in perspective-taking and emotional regulation. Essentially, laughing at misfortune is cognitive jiu-jitsu, using life's momentum to flip its psychological weight. Stand-up comedians know this intimately. Many of history's greatest, from Richard Pryor to Tig Notaro, have spun personal tragedies into transformative material. Notaro's Grammy-nominated album about her cancer diagnosis wasn't just entertainment, it was a masterclass in stoic recalibration. Practical applications abound. Next time you face a ridiculous setback, try the headline test. Imagine how a satirical news outlet would describe your situation. Spilled coffee on your shirt before a big meeting. Local man attempts abstract art on dress shirt, critics unimpressed. Missed a flight because of traffic. GPS leads man on scenic tour of airport departure board. This exercise accomplishes what Seneca praised about self-deprecation. It shrinks problems to their true proportion without denying their existence. The Stoic Alpha's humor never punches down or harms others. It's a precision tool for disarming despair. When SpaceX's early rockets kept exploding, Elon Musk circulated a montage of failures set to upbeat music. Modern Stoics like author Ryan Holiday embrace obstacle humor, sharing memes about their own failures alongside philosophical insights. This creates what psychologists call psychological distance, the ability to view problems as challenges to navigate rather than threats to your core. Chrysippus's legendary final laugh echoes through the ages not because it's flippant, but because it's fearless. When you can chuckle at life's pratfalls while staying committed to its purpose, you've achieved the ultimate Stoic paradox, taking nothing personally while giving everything your all. The donkey may eat your figs, but it can't touch your soul. The 23rd unmistakable sign you're walking the Stoic Alpha path. Philosophy becomes your daily gym, not an abstract subject for dusty bookshelves, but a living practice as essential as breathing. The ancient Stoics didn't just ponder wisdom in their spare time. They structured their days around what we might now call a cognitive triathlon: morning priming, midday mindfulness, and evening reflection. Picture Marcus Aurelius rising before dawn to steel himself for the day's challenges, Seneca pausing midday to interrogate his impulses, Epictetus reviewing conversations like a coach analyzing game tape. This wasn't academic exercise, it was mental armor forged through relentless repetition. Modern neuroscience validates their rhythm. Morning study sessions, what the Stoics called premeditatio, activate the prefrontal cortex when cortisol levels are highest, essentially inoculating the brain against daily stressors. Try this updated version before checking your phone. Spend 15 minutes with Ryan Holiday's The Daily Stoic or the Stoic Coffee Break podcast. These aren't mere pep talks, they're cognitive tuning, aligning your mindset before the world starts making demands. Think of it as mental hygiene, brushing your thoughts before life's debris accumulates. Midday, the Stoics practiced prosoché, mindful attention to judgments and reactions. In today's terms, this translates to scheduled check-ins. Set a phone alert for midday with a question Epictetus would approve. Am I acting on principle or impulse right now? Modern tools like the Stoic app provide push notifications with bite-sized meditations, perfect for those moments between meetings. Even the busiest Silicon Valley CEOs use this trick. Twitter co-founder Ev Williams keeps a physical pause journal for midday course corrections. Evening was the Stoics' laboratory for growth. Marcus Aurelius filled his journals not with to-do lists but with forensic self-reviews. Modern equivalents blend ancient rigor with contemporary convenience. The 5-minute journal prompts structured reflection, while apps like Journey digitize the process with multimedia entries. Clinical studies at the University of Texas show people who practice this Stoic style evening reflection fall asleep 19 minutes faster and report 28% higher life satisfaction. But here's where the Stoic Alpha upgrades tradition. Ancient texts are powerful but dense. Pair them with modern interpreters who bridge the gap. William Irvine's A Guide to the Good Life deciphers Stoic ethics for entrepreneurs. Massimo Pigliucci's How to Be a Stoic applies ancient logic to modern science. For auditory learners, the Stoic Meditations podcast delivers Epictetus in commute-friendly segments while philosophize this. Contextualizes Stoicism within broader philosophical movements. The real magic happens when you cross-pollinate. Read Marcus Aurelius alongside modern resilience research like Angela Duckworth's Grit. Study Seneca's Letters on Time Management while auditing your smartphone usage with Moment app. The Stoic Alpha doesn't treat philosophy as history. They synthesize it with cutting-edge psychology, neuroscience, and behavioral economics to create an operating system for modern excellence. Your bookshelf might hold Donald Robertson's Stoicism and the Art of Happiness beside Naval Ravikant's entrepreneurial wisdom. Your podcast queue could jump from the partial Stoic to Jocko Willink's discipline-focused shows. This fusion creates what psychologist Carol Dweck calls a mastery mindset, the belief that every challenge is an opportunity to apply and expand your philosophical toolkit. The litmus test comes when crisis strikes. Most people reflexively reach for distractions or venting. The Stoic Alpha reaches for their curated resources, whether it's a highlighted passage in Epictetus's discourses or a saved episode of the Daily Stoic that addresses their exact struggle. They've not just consumed philosophy, they've weaponized it, turning ancient wisdom into an always available compass. This daily practice doesn't require hours. Even 10 minutes of focused engagement, reading a passage during breakfast, listening to a Stoic meditation while commuting, journaling before bed, creates compound interest for your character. Like a sculptor chiseling daily, the Stoic Alpha knows that small, consistent efforts shape masterpieces over time. The philosophy isn't in the reading, it's in the rereading, the wrestling, the relentless application until wisdom becomes second nature. Soon you'll catch yourself thinking in Stoic maxims mid-conversation, spotting opportunities for virtue in mundane moments, and feeling the eerie prescience of ancient texts predicting modern dilemmas. That's when you know the transformation is complete, when philosophy stops being something you study and starts being the lens through which you see everything. The 24th sign, you're becoming a Stoic Alpha. You start treating every space you occupy, physical, social, ecological, as something to be improved by your presence, not depleted by it. Cleans, the second head of the Stoic school, wasn't just a philosopher. He was a manual laborer who carried water by night to fund his studies by day. Legend says he deliberately overfilled containers at public wells so the next person would find more than they expected. This wasn't grand environmental activism, it was micro-scale ethics in action, the recognition that true power isn't just taking what you need but leaving reserves for those who follow. Fast forward to modern boardrooms and you'll see this principle scaling beautifully. Patagonia founder Yvon Chouinard didn't just create sustainable products, he rewrote corporate DNA by making earth tax standard practice, 1% of sales dedicated to environmental causes regardless of profitability. The key insight: ethical business isn't charity, it's enlightened self-interest. Companies like Interface Carpets proved this by turning landfill-bound fishing nets into high-end flooring, simultaneously cleaning oceans and dominating a niche no competitor had imagined. The Stoic Alpha in business asks not how much can we extract, but what systems can we regenerate. This manifests personally too. Consider two travelers at a beach. One leaves footprints and trash, the other gathers stray bottles while walking. Both enjoyed the same view, but the second honored clean's legacy by treating communal spaces as extensions of their home. Japanese philosophers call this motenai, the aversion to wastefulness. Sweden's plogging trend, jogging while picking up litter, combines fitness with civic care. These aren't sacrifices, they're small acts of stewardship that accumulate into cultural transformation. The deepest application lies in knowledge sharing. Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus insisted philosophers teach publicly without fees, not because their wisdom lacked value, but because ideas grow when planted generously. Modern equivalents include open-source programmers like Linus Torvalds, whose free Linux kernel powers 90% of cloud infrastructure, or epidemiologists who published COVID research without paywalls during the pandemic. The Stoic Alpha doesn't hoard expertise, they distribute it like cleans overflowing wells, knowing that elevating others doesn't diminish their own reserves. Even conflict transforms under this ethos. Ancient Athenians had a practice called liturgical giving, wealthy citizens voluntarily funding public works. The Stoic Alpha applies this to emotional labor, mediating disputes they didn't start, mentoring newcomers without being asked, or simply leaving conversations lighter than they found them. Like gardeners tending soil they won't harvest, these actions create conditions for unseen future growth. The ultimate test comes at career junctures. When architect William McDonough designed factories, he didn't just reduce pollution, he made buildings that cleaned air like trees. His question wasn't, how do we meet regulations? But what would nature do here? That shift, from damage control to active restoration, separates token compliance from legacy thinking. Whether you're coding software or raising children, the Stoic Alpha's compass points the same way. Never pass through any system without leaving it better equipped for whoever comes next. Because in the end, your tombstone won't list what you acquired, only what you gave back. And the paradox, those who focus on leaving value often find their own cups overflowing along the way. You realize immortality isn't about adding years to your life. It's about adding life to your years. That's the 25th and final sign you've fully embraced the Stoic Alpha mindset. Seneca saw this clearly when he wrote, "Life is long if you know how to use it." He wasn't talking about medical breakthroughs or genetic engineering. He was challenging our very definition of what makes a life meaningful. Consider this paradox. The average Roman lived about 35 years, yet Seneca's writings still shape minds 2 millennia later. Meanwhile, modern humans live twice as long, but often fill those extra decades with distractions that leave no ripple. The Stoic Alpha doesn't just count breaths, they make breaths count. Take the contrasting legacies of two geniuses, Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison. Tesla died penniless in a hotel room, having dedicated every waking moment to visionary inventions that would electrify civilization. Edison spent his final years amassing patents and wealth, yet today we measure voltage in Teslas, not Edisons. The difference wasn't lifespan, it was depth of contribution. Tesla's obsession wasn't with living long, but with living awake, declaring, "I do not think there is any thrill that can go through the human heart like that felt by the inventor as he sees some creation of the brain unfolding to success." The Stoic Alpha recognizes this truth. Impact outlives expiration dates. Modern science validates Seneca's insight in unexpected ways. Harvard's longitudinal study on adult development, tracking lives for 85 years, found that richness of relationships, not retirement accounts, predicted both longevity and life satisfaction. Participants who cultivated deep connections lived an average of 7 years longer than isolated peers, proving that quality time literally creates quantity. The Stoic Alpha applies this principle beyond personal bonds. They measure days by how much they've grown, contributed, or created, not just endured. History's most enduring figures knew this instinctively. Van Gogh sold one painting in his lifetime, yet painted with such intensity that his Starry Night now hangs in the subconscious of humanity. Emily Dickinson wrote nearly 2,000 poems in near total obscurity, her brilliance only recognized posthumously. Neither cared for conventional success metrics. Their focus was the work itself, the daily practice of mastery that Stoics called arete. Contrast this with today's longevity bros, fixated on cryonics and calorie restriction, as if extending biological existence automatically confers meaning. The Stoic Alpha would ask, what's the point of living to 120 if 80 of those years are spent in sterile self-obsession? This mindset reshapes career choices. Most people climb corporate ladders thinking, if I grind now, I'll enjoy life later. The Stoic Alpha engineers the opposite, ensuring each phase contains meaning. When software engineer Pieter Levels built Nomad List, he didn't wait for retirement to travel. He coded from Bangkok beaches and Lisbon cafes, proving geographic freedom beats corner offices. Journalist Christopher Hitchens, diagnosed with terminal cancer at 62, reflected, "I don't have a bucket list because I've been checking it off my whole life." The lesson, depth compounds. A year spent fully present often yields more legacy than a decade on autopilot. Even mundane moments transform under this lens. The Stoic Alpha doesn't just commute, they listen to audiobooks that expand their mind. They don't merely scroll news feeds, they curate inputs that challenge their thinking. Like a master chef who extracts maximum flavor from every ingredient, they distill meaning from ordinary hours. Modern studies on time affluence, the feeling of having abundant, well-spent time, show that people who engage in deep play, activities merging joy and growth, report more life satisfaction than those with bloated bank accounts but empty calendars. The ultimate test comes when facing mortality. When Stoic teacher Epictetus was asked how to live well, he replied, "As if you were dying today but had lived fully always." This isn't morbid, it's clarifying. Steve Jobs echoed this in his Stanford commencement speech. "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life." The Stoic Alpha carries this awareness lightly but consistently, not as a looming threat but as a focusing lens. So here's the real measure. When your biography is written, whether for millions or just your grandchildren, will it describe a life that spanned many years or one that radiated meaning in every season? That's the Stoic Alpha's true north, not the length of the timeline but the light it cast. So where do you stand on the path to becoming a Stoic Alpha? Let's take inventory. These 25 signs aren't just markers, they're a mirror. 1. You've stopped fighting reality and started working with it. 2. Emotions inform you instead of controlling you. 3. Obstacles feel like invitations to grow rather than roadblocks. 4. Your self-worth isn't borrowed from others' opinions. 5. You train for disasters before they strike. 6. Silence becomes your strategic ally. 7. Praise and criticism land with equal lightness. 8. Blame disappears from your vocabulary. 9. Time becomes your most guarded currency. 10. Mornings are rituals of mental armor. 11. You seek discomfort like an athlete seeks resistance training. 12. Judgment gives way to curiosity. 13. Effort matters more than outcomes. 14. Adversity feels like a forge. 15. Your journal is a philosophical training ground. 16. Emergencies reveal your preparation, not your panic. 17. You view life from 10,000 feet. 18. You act without waiting for permission. 19. Anger fuels focused action, not explosions. 20. Integrity defines success. 21. Solitude is your recharge. 22. Laughter disarms misfortune. 23. Philosophy is daily practice, not theory. 24. You leave every space better than you found it. And 25. You measure life by depth, not duration. Now here's your challenge. Print this list, stick it where you'll see it daily, your mirror, your fridge, your workspace. For the next 30 days, track your progress. Not with vague intentions, but with brutal honesty. Did you resist reality today or adapt to it? Did you outsource your worth or stand firm in your values? At week's end, tally your victories and setbacks, not to judge yourself, but to refine your practice. This isn't about perfection, it's about progression. Cato the Younger, the Stoic who defied emperors, left us a razor-sharp filter for action. I begin to speak when I'm certain what I'll say isn't better left unsaid. Let that be your litmus test, not just for words, but for every choice. Does this reaction serve my growth? Is this effort aligned with my principles? Does this silence hold wisdom or fear? Before you go, I want to hear from you. Which of these 25 signs hit closest to home? Maybe it's the morning ritual that's transformed your focus, or the way you've started laughing in the face of setbacks. Drop it in the comments, not just to share, but to solidify your commitment, because the Stoic Alpha isn't forged in isolation. We sharpen each other. Your insight might be the spark someone else needs to start their own transformation. The path is clear, the tools are in your hands. Now, what will you build with them?